Warm welcome. You're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Choudhary. We're going to put the focus on our neighbouring island nation Sri Lanka in the grips of a debilitating economic crisis where reports filtering in of people standing in long queues to get fuel, fainting, some of them. The others, acute power cuts coming in where people are walking 24 stories just to get to their homes. On the other hand, surgeries not being able to take place primarily because there is no power. My colleague Ashutosh Mishra is on ground documenting this unprecedented economic crisis that the nation is under. The latest, of course, due to acute pressure by the citizenry, the people, the opposition. Most of Rajapaksa brothers' cabinet has stepped down. But will the Rajapaksa brothers step down? That's the big question. Here's more.
A crippling economic crisis, marathon power cuts daily, huge crunch of essential commodities, skyrocketing prices, widespread unrest, protests and anger. Runaway inflation has put Sri Lanka on edge, sparking unrelenting protests against the government. Widespread anger has brought the island nation to its knees, forcing the entire cabinet of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to quit. The central bank governor too has resigned, but protesters demand the resignation of the president himself, as his government has little clue on how to fight the worst economic crisis in Lankan history.
Security arrangements by the government, which claims to be maintaining the law and order, but here, since it's the suffering of the people, they are agitating, they are protesting. The fuel prices, of course, there are no fuel at all, there is no foreign reserve to import, there is a rocket high inflation, soaring inflation that is affecting the common people, and that's exactly triggered this massive agitation against the government. The crisis here at ground zero continues.
Government in change, okay. You know why? The president is very bad. Big brother, younger brother. Government no money, people no money. Poor people, me okay, second class. Poor people, nothing. What they can do? They cheat the people.
Farmers not giving the pressurizer and chemical.
Okay.
And after the main thing is a power cut. That's the reason the increase.
Amidst this ongoing crisis, a state of emergency had been declared last week by the beleaguered government. Strict security is in place after spates of vandalism in Colombo and elsewhere. Damage worth 4 crore Sri Lankan rupees has been reported till now, and it's rising. The government had earlier imposed a ban on all social media, which has now been lifted. The Lankan opposition has also cornered the Rajapaksa government, seeking international help to fight the crisis, partly triggered by $4 billion worth of international debt.
Right now, Sri Lanka is subjected to a variety of vulnerabilities. We are whichever subject area, we are vulnerable. And that vulnerability has been caused by the misgovernance of this present administration.
To contain the situation, the Lankan president has asked the opposition to join the government. With Ashutosh Mishra in Colombo, Sri Lanka, Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, viewers, we're going to cut across right now to the citizens who are rather helpless in Colombo. Joining us from there would also be my colleague Ashutosh Mishra, who the course of the last few days has been chronicling, documenting as the country completely spirals into an economic spin of sorts. There's a lot of unrest where the people are concerned, asking that the government step down, unable to contain the situation with what is being witnessed. I want to cut across to two people who live in Colombo who are rather vocal, or at least were vocal till there was a brief clampdown on social media because of the emergency as well. I have with me Tushanti Ponvira. She's a poet. Also Indrajit Samarajiva. He's an author, and I believe he's just coming in from one protest as well. Tushanti, if I may begin with you, I've seen many of your posts on social media. You're speaking out your mind. I'm sure there is a sense of disbelief also with what you're seeing your own country go through.
Yes, it's completely surreal, but in a way it was also inevitable, Preeti, because I mean, has been a long time coming. We've seen this country being mismanaged. There's been lots of corruption and bad decisions. And everyone's really frustrated. We've been let down time and time again by successive governments. And right now we're at a point where we can't even carry on with our day-to-day lives. We don't have gas, fuel, electricity. We can't even plan ahead. Even this, I'm here at my parents because back home there's a power cut and I wouldn't have been able to connect with you today during a power cut. And I think people are being treated very cruelly. They're being denied of their basic rights. Kids are starving. Patients can't get medicine. People are losing their livelihoods. Fishermen can't even get enough fuel to take their boats out to sea. And if you've noticed, you may have seen surgeons performing surgeries with phone lines, which is unbelievable. We're already a poor country, and right now more and more people are being driven to poverty with the rising cost of inflation. Things are getting either it's unavailable because of the ban on imports, or it's unaffordable because it's so expensive. But what I think was the final straw was and is the complete lack of accountability and lack of empathy from the president and really anyone from the government. They haven't been able to connect with the people, address their concerns, even like be on the ground and see what's happening. No one's visited a fuel queue. And although I think it seems like the protests and the protesters were violent, I think it's because people are really angry, frustrated. We've been ignored. We have nothing to lose. And I think everyone is really sick of it, even the Sinhala Buddhist majority upon whose votes the president came into power. So everyone is on the streets now. We want long-term change, real change. We want transparency. We want corruption to end. This whole culture needs to change,
Right.
not just for the majority, but also the minorities who have been suffering long enough.
You know, Tushanti, I want to ask you because has, you know, this current economic crisis, because your country actually has seen quite a bit of strife in, you know, at various levels through the course of history. But has this been the biggest leveler for somebody like you? Are you also struggling for basic amenities right now?
No, thankfully I'm privileged. I'd say even to be here, you know, I have a roof above my head. I don't have to stand in queue. I can be here talking to you. And that puts me in a better position than most people, which is really horrible. It's awful. You know, we don't want to see that. Like the disparity is growing. Leveler in the sense, yes, I think the majority is feeling that way, but I really don't know whether this will last. I hope it lasts, where we come together united, but I hope things will change for everyone, not just the majority, as I said before. But I hope that, you know, the minorities, things will be better for them finally too.
Tushanti, stay with me. I want to bring in Indrajit as well. Indrajit, we connected with you on Friday. You know, are the power cuts still as debilitating as they were on Friday? Have things got better? I would reckon the only thing that's changed in the last 48 hours since I spoke with you is emergency. Your country's under emergency now.
So the power cuts aren't as bad. I think they're actually quite scared, and they're scaring up fuel from anywhere they can. There's supposed to be a power cut right now, but it hasn't kicked in yet. But I mean, fundamentally, the economic fundamentals are still there. We still don't have the dollars. We're still not producing exports that people want to buy in Sri Lankan rupees. So the crisis is there. I think the government is really hoping for it to rain, because at that point, our hydropower can kick in, and then people wouldn't be on the streets as much.
Indrajit, you're coming in from a protest yourself. You know, there is emergency right now. Very briefly, there was a clamp on social media as well. You say, you know, you said it last time, and you know, that's what I gather from speaking to Tushanti as well, that this unrest that there is in the citizenry in Sri Lanka is organic. You've come in from a protest. What is the demand right now? Because practically all of your president's cabinet, other than him and his brothers, have stepped down.
Yeah. So the protests are absolutely organic. I think almost any Sri Lankan, you don't have to walk more than a kilometer to find a protest where your neighbors would be at. I went to a protest 100 meters from here, which was organized by the Inter-University Students Federation, and they've actually been protesting. I mean, they're socialist students. They've been protesting since 1978. They're quite experienced at it. But at this protest, lots of people just came and joined. So people who would get off the bus, they would come and join. There were people with the young children, with families. And what I found interesting was actually someone came by in a Prado, so obviously a rich person, and they're hanging out the sunroof holding their signs, and they come and turn around and join this protest by, young socialist students. So that's the level of, I guess, we're all quite united about Rajapaksa's go home because we want our homes back.
A lot to Shanti, it's a political question, but Indrajit, I'll ask you this. There's a lot of talk that this entire, the protests that you see on ground are actually being fueled by the opposition. How much of play is the opposition in this, and how much do you see actually people like you joining in the protest against the government, wanting it to step down?
Well, I mean, look, the opposition came out and protested earlier, and that's part of our democracy. It's good if the opposition comes out. But is the opposition fueling protests, like every 500 meters? No, they don't even have that capacity. These are completely organic protests. These are people who are stepping out of their homes and joining other people. And when I was in the protest, everybody going by is honking in support, or they're waving. Even the ambulances are stopping and honking. This is quite organic that everybody wants these guys to go. We want a new future for our country. And if the opposition is involved, good for them. That's part of our political process. But these are people's protests. All the people are out. Well, actually, one thing I'll add is
Shanti,
I think every MP's home has been protested in front of.
Yes, please, go ahead.
So I think every MP's home has been protested in front of now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Rajapaksas, their ancestral home, people protested there, and that's the heart of their power. So that's how they don't have support in their own hometown. That's how wide the protests are.
Indrajit, are things better for your son? You said it was, horrible in terms of no power, nothing is well, because this seems to be the long haul now. Because this is not going to, clearly, stem in a couple of days. It's not government created. It's an economic tragedy that you guys are going through.
Yeah, look, I think these are long-term problems that started really 40 years ago. To me, it's part of neoliberal capitalist economics, where we've just been sort of like a colony. We just outport cheap labor and resources, and we buy imported goods, and we prop that up with aid and then with commercial loans, but the fundamentals of the economics weren't there. And I think Sri Lanka has to return to what it was, which is a democratic socialist republic, where we actually produce goods and where we produce energy and agriculture for ourselves, and we produce excess that we can export. And that's a long process. It's a 40-year process that got us here. It'll be decades to get us out.
Stay with me, Indrajit, and I'd request Shanti also to stay with me. My colleague Ashutosh is on ground, and he spoke to some of the protesters there. I want to just quickly dip in and come back to the both of you.
No food, no gas, no electricity. And that's exactly why the people are agitating on the streets of Colombo. This is Independence Square of Colombo, one of the iconic places in Sri Lanka's capital. And there you see the youth has hit the street against the Rajapaksa government. And despite the resignation of the cabinet, the councils, here the protest breaks out in a huge number. The youth from Colombo that is protesting against the Gotia government. And again, it's the economic crisis, and that has led to this massive situation for almost everyone, be the VIP or a common person. The soaring inflation has hit everyone. Seeking justice, most of these protesters demanding the Gotia government to go. That's exactly what is happening here. We're seeing the protests breaking out all across the country. Now joining me some youth here at this iconic Independence Square. We know why the protest is on, why the protest is breaking out. There have been, several restrictions order. We have seen the curfew in place, emergency in place, but we have seen the cabinet tendering resignation. You think this will resolve the crisis, and this is also somewhere meeting the demand demand, what the people were demanding?
No, I do not. I think this is the drama. This is a real facade. I think there should be a constitutional amendment to basically hold a presidential election soon, because the president can resign and hold a presidential election soon. So that is the only way to stop this impasse.
So what do you think? What triggered this economic crisis in Sri Lanka, and how did it start?
Well, there are so many. Of course, the COVID is one of the reasons. However, COVID is a problem that is affecting all the countries in the world, not just Sri Lanka. And initially, this government handled the COVID crisis very well, to be fair.
It is the disappointment, and now it is now at the extent of anger. And there you see the boys and the girls in a huge number. And this is one of the very iconic place in Colombo, carrying the national flag, the banners and the posters. Now the demand grows for the resignation of President Rajapaksa. Now, when it comes to the people's own life due to the soaring inflation, how much it is affecting the common people of Sri Lanka when it comes to the soaring inflation, the economic crisis?
Actually, we are finished. We are finished. I mean, people are suffering more than enough. People are suffering.
All right, I had Indrajit and Tushanti. Tushanti, I want to cut across to you before we finally, all right, Tushanti, stay with me. We finally do have my colleague Ashutosh, who seems to be busier than the president of Sri Lanka, because we've been waiting for him for the last 15 minutes. Ashutosh, you've been trying to encapsulate the mood of the people. We saw that report just filed by you. What's the sense that you're right now picking up? You've been to many of these protests. They seem to be organic. We've been talking to the various citizens, who've been very vocal, especially on social media and otherwise on the streets as well. What's the sense that you're picking up?
Well, it was first the policies of the government that led to this massive economic crisis here in Sri Lanka, all across the country. And then the people did not wait for any opposition leader to initiate or lead or such kind of protest against the government, because that was the time when the critics were totally shut down by the government. They used army, they used police against them. But this time the situation is so grave. Remember, imagine a country where there is a crisis of gas, there is a crisis of diesel, petrol, there is a shortage of food items, essential food items. And if you see just right behind me, this is one of the VVIP area of Colombo, and not even street lights are functional. These are only the vehicles, and the commercial establishment that you see are totally under dark. So imagine there are 12 to 13 hours of electricity shortage. Electricity regulators are not supplying, maintaining the electricity supply. A country which do not have enough money to print paper to carry out the examinations. So this explains where the country has reached, and all because of the policies of Rajapaksa government, as the people blame. From presidential ship to the cabinet minister, there is only one family ruling, and that was the key trigger point of the people here, that they have been continuously ignoring first the policies, and now at this extent, when they are literally dying, there is nothing here. Everything is under shortage. Now they are on the mercy of the international monitoring bodies. The neighboring countries like India, Japan, they all are offering help. But what is the future? There is totally dark, like these streets. The people believe the country is in now dark, and that's now at the moment they're demanding the entire, because last night there was cabinet resignation. They tendered resignation to the president. President is appealing all the opposition camp also to be part of the all-party cabinet. But everything looks like a whitewash, as the people say. Now they're only demanding, first the Rajapaksa family has to tender resignation. See, everyone, their auto, the man who just passed, started shouting a slogan again. So this is totally organic protest organized by the people. They will lead the movement, and it was all spread out through the various social media platforms. In fact, yesterday there was Pan-India, Pan-Island protest was designed, and to curb that, day before yesterday, not only the curfew was imposed, but also there was restrictions on the social media platform. Well, people defied everything, and even today at the historic Independence Square, at the Rajapaksa Stadium, this is not only the Colombo, even right at the place where I am standing, there was a protest march, and all across the country, somewhere also it is leading to the massive clashes between that. So clearly government is on the back foot. The people need solution, but first they want the government to go. See the people again, everyone, those who are going carrying banner or poster, and there is only and only protest, organic protest by the people against the government at the moment that we are seeing here in Colombo. Preeti.
All right, Tushanti, I want to, come to you again. And is it now untenable as a citizen who's been a part of protests on ground? I've seen you extremely vocal on social media as well. Now, is the position completely untenable, where the citizenry at least and, the economic crisis have got you guys together? It's been the biggest leveler, I would reckon, in that aspect. There is no, place for the current incumbent government.
Sorry, what was your question, Preeti?
Tushanti, do you see it now that there's only change and that is it? That the government will have to step down for anything to take place?
Well, I don't know if it's constitutionally possible, but yes, if they do step down, that won't make any difference if the people who are elected back into power are the same people, which we saw quite a lot of anger this morning when ministers who had stepped down yesterday are being re-elected to the cabinet and just given a different portfolio. So that's not what people want. People want, new energy, fresh people here who have the country's best interests at heart. I think we just want a complete overhaul. And I hope that, I don't think the people will stop till we get that.
Right. Indraji, do you also believe the same? Because, when your finance minister is actually a relative of the president as well, a lot, changes when you don't have fuel, when you don't have power, you're going through these endless summer nights without power, without fuel, without basics.
So, I think another slogan going around is that 225 must go. So that's the whole parliament. So I think people do want a sort of revolutionary change. This cabinet reshuffle, he put his personal lawyer in as finance minister now. It's a joke. And then he put Johnston Fernando. He appointed someone as highways minister, which makes no sense when nobody can drive on the roads. But if you read, there's an article in the Sunday Times by Namani Vijayadasa, and they're trying to push one more dodgy highway deal through. They're trying to loot still on the way down. So yeah, they have to go. And honestly, people don't have too much trust for any of the parties. I think the people have been disappointed in a lot of this. They've all followed the same sort of neoliberal economics, whether it's the SJB or the SLPP. So I think, I'm not saying all the people believe that or what I believe, but people definitely want to change. We want a systemic change. We don't want just new people or the same old people reshuffled into the same positions. We don't want old wine in new bottles.
But before I let the both of you go, Indrajit, I want to ask you, because, you've been, very active in terms of these protests that are going on. My colleague is picking them up from ground. I want to ask you, how limited are these protests just to Colombo? Are we seeing sweeping protests across your country right now, or are these just pockets?
Are you asking me? Yeah.
Yes, Indrajit, to you. It's to you.
Okay, sorry. No, so these protests are everywhere. So I follow it on Twitter. They're everywhere. So there's protests in Gaul. There's protests in Matara. Those are the ones I've seen. Every MP's home, town, there are protests there where people are going to their houses. So there's protests all over the island. There's protests in Jaffna. The IUSF, the Student Federation, has led protests at the Open University in Nawala, which is in Colombo, Southeastern University, Peradena University. This is everywhere. So I don't even understand how the cops are managing this, because, look, if you live in Sri Lanka, I don't think you would need to walk more than 2 kilometers to protest. I don't think you would. They're everywhere.
Right. All right, I appreciate both of you for joining us. Thank you there for taking out the time. I know you have debilitating power cuts. We've eaten up a bit of that battery for the both of you. Thank you there. My colleague Ashutosh would be tracking the crisis in Sri Lanka. Things are bad in Colombo, but as we are hearing and picking up, it's worse outside as well. And he's going to be documenting all those reports of Sri Lanka going through its worst economic crisis since its independence in 48.